So welcome back to Marcelian Online. Today we're going to be looking at all of the DPS for Mythic Plus across time. Not really, just for this patch right now. And it's looking half of it what you might expect and half of it you will definitely not expect, because there's some moving around. And also make sure to stick around until the end, because we're going to have a beautiful display of evolution of all of the specs on how they clear keys, at what key levels, how many people are playing them, how good they are. So without too much delay, let's hop into Frost Death Knight. And as you might expect, it's still rocking it solid as an S tier spec, one of the best melees in the game. Not much to say here, I mean, especially if you've been playing for a little while or if you've been watching any other of our tier lists. Nothing really changed for Frost DK that's worth mentioning. It's still very strong. It is a tanky spec. It has decent damage profiles, especially with Breath of Sindragosa. You can really only get the full value of a Frost DK with a pre-made group or a tank that knows exactly what's up, or maybe even people that you can actually communicate with. It is a very specific playstyle that relies a lot on external conditions. But at the very least, it deserves its place in the S tier, because just playing Frost DK is just good WoW gameplay. And what better way to kick off some good WoW and the holidays than with a new healthy habit as well from today's sponsor, Fume. Fume is a flavored air device, actually the premier alternative to vaping, and an amazingly fun and safe way to replace some bad habits. Fume is actively committing to its safety policies with toxicology reports and studies, among many more, to ensure the proper quality for their plant-based products. Yep, the device itself does not contain nicotine or vapor or toxic flavors, but instead uses a cartridge-like system that you put in and draw in flavored air, all based off of plant compounds that they use in their formula. The cool part about the Fume devices is that its shape and texture approaches the habit of always feeling the need to keep something in your hand or to bring it to your mouth, and the mouthpiece can be augmented by a topper, which is this rubbery thing you slap on it. It's soft and flexible to the touch, easily washable, and perfect for people who are fidgety, especially when it comes with magnets and snaps and clicks, which help calm the anxiety. The holidays are around the corner, and you can treat yourself, or maybe someone close to you that you know is looking for an alternative to vaping, with Fume, which is coming in hot with the top-of-the-line quality flavored air devices. Go to tryfume.com/Marcelian and use our code Marcelian for a free topper when you order your journey pack. This holiday season can even see you as a winner of a gold-plated limited edition Fume device. Click the link below or even scan the QR code on the screen to grab yours right away. Thank you, Fume, for sponsoring our video. Moving on to Unholy Death Knight, that has seen a rise over the last couple of weeks, maybe due to MDI. I think it's pretty much MDI. Nothing really changed for Unholy DK. It was always really good. And I would know, because Marcelian is playing Unholy DK, and he's been #1 in the meters for 3-4 months already. And I'm like, why aren't more people playing this spec? I'll tell you why. Because they think it's shit, because nobody in MDI played it before. They saw it there now. They're like, this is kind of juicy. And it is kind of juicy. It is S tier, not in front of Frost DK, no, not yet, but it is one of the strongest melees in the game. It's actually rising really highly, where it's clearing the same level of keys as Frost DK's, plus 19s. There's like 1 or 2 cleared at the moment, so it's not that many. It's still not that popular, but it can actually be done, and this is why it's a little bit behind Frost DK. I expect it to be even more popular. I mean, I don't know if it's more popular than Frost DK, but at the very least, it's not as conditioned around your Breath of Sindragosa, because obviously you don't have it. You do have to kind of have big pools. Unholy actually scales way better in big pools. I mean, you've seen those in Necrotic Wake, plus 15 million DPS Unholy DKs. That's what you're not going to do 15 million. Don't worry about it. Just think of something else. Think of Havoc Demon Hunter. Actually, do not think of Havoc Demon Hunter. Boy, oh boy. Okay, so I'm putting it into C tier, but I need to explain to you what C tier means. So overall, the way we kind of stretch these out is more or less around the key level that they do. So S tiers would be plus 19s, and a bunch of 18s, right? A tier would be 18s with 17s, B tier would be kind of like full-on 17, 16s, and C tier is just 15s, right? That's where Havoc is. I mean, doing 15s is no picnic, it's no walk in a park. It's still pretty good, but compared to everybody else, it is a little bit down in the tier list, because obviously we're just looking at the top key players. If you're playing Havoc and you're +4 and you're destroying the meters, then that's great, but you're not gonna do that in a 16, I'll tell you that much. Havoc is fine. Like, we've talked about Havoc in past tier lists and in past videos. I just really don't think it brings anything unique. It doesn't bring any particularly strong points that you would want a Havoc for. You might want it for the debuff, the 3%, but you're not gonna get that out of a Havoc because it just cannot compete with the specs that would benefit from that 3%. Let's say Frost DK, let's say Mages, let's say Balanced Druids, and all those specs. And if you do bring those specs and you think you want the 3%, you're not gonna have room for Havoc, and you might be thinking Vengeance, but not even Vengeance because Prop Paladin just does way more. There's no room. The Demon Hunter is just doesn't have any room. It's kind of like below average. It does really good, but just a little bit short of very good. Balanced Druid has also seen a rise. I don't know why. I guess it would probably be due to MDI as well. Maybe it's a little bit better than Unholy. There's way more Balanced Druids pushing the 19 keys than and the 18s and 19s than Unholy DK, so we can put it right there. We know a bunch of Balanced Druids have been rocking it since the start of the season. Dork is also one of the most known one right now, and I think is like rank 3rd or 4th right now in the world, depending on when you watch this video. I mean, it's good. Obviously, I have a sore spot for Balanced Druid because of its design, but it's no stranger to having a lot of damage. It obviously has a benefit in bringing Mark of the Wild, which is maybe one of the biggest contribution that you would want, plus a Curse Dispel, plus a Poison Dispel, all in one, which is more than we can say about other specs. I don't know, Shaman can only dispel Curse and Disease, and they need Poison Cleansing Totem for the poison, I'm thinking. So there might be a way to fit in a Balanced Druid if you don't have anything else in terms of its tools, because obviously the damage is there. Feral is weird. Okay, so Feral is also in C tier, but there are a couple of people that are really, like, 1 or 2 maybe top Ferals in the world that are really pushing keys above every other Feral in the world. Like, if I would have to rank Feral based off the rank 1 Feral player would be B tier, 100%. So it has potential, but just one player doing that kind of feels a little bit skewed, a little bit irrelevant or redundant, since I want to see more people be able to do that. I don't need to see like 2,000 players cranking Ferals. Why? But by like 3 would be nice. Until then, Feral is good, but it's way better than Havoc. It's just not quite yet at B tier. Has the potential though. Devastation is yet still at the very bottom. Maybe I can put my finger on it if I really think about it. So Devastation is around 14s. I don't think there is or 15s. I don't think Devastation can even compare with the C tier specs right now. And I don't know why. It definitely has the damage. Is it just the shadow of Augmentation that's keeping Devastation from rising? Because really, these two specs have such similar toolkits. Augmentation has pretty much everything Devastation has, plus more, and damage. So there really isn't a good reason to play Devastation outside of I just like it. And for I just like it, it kind of lands you in D tier. It's not a terrible spec, but in terms of overall performance, in the grand scheme of things, in the highest of keys that are being pushed, Devastation is one of the lowest, if not the lowest. Affliction is going to go all the way in C tier. Where did I say? It's a little bit, it's in front of Havoc. It's been doing good. Once again, a lot of the specs in C tier have like one top player in their respective spec, like rank 1, Affliction the World, something like that, that is just pushing way higher than everybody else. And once again, I cannot really rank it based off of that player because that's just not enough. It needs to be consistent because, you know, a good party can augment one player, right? You can take like some of the best players in the world, put them in the party with a Devastation, and that Devastation will crank up 1 or 2 key levels above every other Devastation, right? Just because the party can facilitate that. And because that can happen, I'm not saying that it's happening here, but that can definitely happen. It's very hard to put Affliction in a tier based off of the #1 player. But other than that, Affliction has seen a little bit of a rise. I mean, I say that, but it's still in C tier. But even with C tier, it's doing 16s, right? So it's getting there. And 16s are pretty high. but that's where it's going to be at the moment. Beast Mastery Hunter is pretty low on the list. I debated on whether or not to put it with Devastation down in D tier, but I feel like it's doing a little bit better than Devastation. I think it has 1 or 2 more 15s than Devastations, like overall, and you know, averaged out. And it's still a hunter. It brings, I guess Devastation brings Bloodlust as well. I feel like it has a few more tools that are useful than Devastation as a hunter, because you kind of have access to the entirety of WoW's utility kit one way or another, not all at the same time, of course. But BM hasn't seen the best of its days in the War Within, not since the season started, and it doesn't seem like towards the season's end, although we're still a ways off from the end of the season, probably a month or 2 left of the season. I don't expect Beast Mastery to climb any higher unless we get like some turbo buffs, and those buffs will probably have to hit C tier and D tier, not just Beast Mastery. But I think officially Marksmanship is the worst performing spec in Mythic Plus. With that being said, that's still, you know, in the range of 14s, possibly 15s as well. So it's not super bad. It's still doing keys higher than I am doing, and I'm playing B8 tier spec. You'll see in a second. So I cannot really, you know, judge it too harshly. It still obviously has the potential, but I feel like it's similar to Beast Mastery, where it just didn't really catch a break. They did buff Dark Ranger in 11.0.5, but that seemed to have affected Beast Mastery more so than Marksmanship, since Marksmanship's, last I checked, they are still playing Sentinel, and that's not really indicative to their key level pushing, but that is indicative to the fact that they're not really getting any real love, any types of balance. So it's great that we see patch tunings and taking down, you know, Enhancement Shamans and all those specs that are kind of like pushing the boundaries a little bit too much, but I kind of want to see some buffs, you know what I mean? A little bit of love for C and D tier. Love like Survival received. God damn, this spec shot up all the way into A tier. I also debated in putting this into S tier, but it's just not quite there yet. It is surprisingly good, and people have discovered that Survival cranks, man. People are playing Survival in their parties like, wait a minute. What's going on? What's going on over here? What's with this damage, man? That's basically Survival at the moment. Not much to say about its kit as a hunter. It's great, but during the, or in the keys that usually you're going to be bringing a Survival, you're likely going to have another class slash spec that will cover what you need in terms of utility, so you don't really need Survival. Survival is just great. It has good damage. It has still extra stuns, extra traps, extra skips that you can do. I don't know if there are particularly any quirky mechanics that you can do as a hunter. Survival as well to feign deaths or mechanics you can, but they tend to reset and, you know, target other players. I'm thinking Necrotic Wake first boss, or the leaps and Mist of Turn Aside that tend to be particularly difficult to deal with. Outside of that, it's just a really solid spec, similar to, actually no, I thought I was gonna use another one. No, Arcane is average right now. It's middle of the pack. It was never really amazing in Mythic Plus. It did draw some attention at the beginning of the season in terms of raids and single target, but it has been nerfed so much that now it's just average. And in terms of its AoE, it's different because it could also be bumped down to C tier. There's like 1 or 2 more players that are actually pushing, and I think there's Wildy Schnell. I don't know how to pronounce your name, bro, but you are cranking with Arcane. You're literally carrying the whole spec. Man is exploding and keeping up with top 20 of keys cleared as of recording this video as an Arcane Mage, like the only Arcane Mage that does that. Other than that, obviously, I play Arcane Mage as well, not as a focus, but it is a very good spec. It doesn't really scale well with large AoEs. It has some killer priority damage, though, and still crazy single target, so you would want an Arcane Mage for the boss damage. Obviously, Mage just has a really good kit for Mythic Plus. You have the Curse Dispel, which is so good. You can never have enough Curse Dispels in Grim Batol, for instance, which is one of the harder dungeons to get through. And you have Invisibility. You have decent defensives that you can rotate and survive where other specs might struggle, specs that are probably even S tier. That is not Fire Mage, but I'm just looking at my data here because I have everything on the second monitor. Well, looks like the buffs for fire have seen it risen, and I have played a fair bit of Frostfire Fire Mage, and it feels so good. It's also so difficult to play, bro, like way more difficult than Arcane. I did not expect that going in. It has received some very much needed buffs. I don't think it's enough to make it rise any higher, maybe at most in A tier. It still has builds where you can scale up ignite damage, which is really good damage profile because you can just sink everything into this one big HP mob, and then it just cleaves into very efficient and good damage all around. Obviously, it has the Mage Toolkit that I talked about with Arcane. It has way better AoE than Arcane does. You can potentially have some of the biggest AoE in the game, but you lose so much boss damage. I don't know if those will be the builds that people play, and I've looked at some of the top fire mages. They're still playing Sun Fury. Some of the highest keys are still done as Sun Fury, so it's nice. It's a little bit of back and forth between Frostfire and Sun Fury. It's not important, and what's important is that the spec has been buffed, and I still don't think it can reach all the way into S tier, not just yet, until it gets a little bit more buffs. But I mean, I'm personally happy with where fire is at the moment. It's at least competitive with other specs. Frost Mage is the star of the show when it comes to Mage in the first season. It is currently cranking in S tier, cranking 18s and 19s. I think there's 19 that no, I think as of recording this video, I hope I can still catch this snippet. You might see it on screen right now if I manage to get it in time before somebody else clears 19s, but I think the rank 1 key in this week at the moment is with the Frost Mage, which that's pretty good. That's, you know, it does a lot of heavy lifting into putting it into S tier. Frost Mage has way better AoE, has the best AoE out of all of the other mage specs, and it sacrifices the least amount of single target to get that damage. It's a very simplistic spec, and it's likely the tankiest of the mage specs, considering that, you know, Frost is just naturally tanky because of Cold Snap, resets your defensive cooldowns, among other stuff, and it's really good. Outside of that, having perma-slow on mobs is just a godsend. The higher in keys you go, there will be a time when the tank might have to kite. However much I don't support that playstyle, they do have to sometimes, and having everything slowed by, what is it, 70% is just chef's kiss. Windwalker has also seen better days, and people complain about Windwalker that it's just overwhelmingly or consistently at the bottom of the tiers. It kind of is, and it kind of has been even through Dragonflight, and it's a little bit of a shame. It's not the only one that's been consistently down, of course, but it feels like it's more often than most specs. It's fine, it's C tier, it's I don't know, clearing 16s at the moment. It's not gonna, you know, draw any attention. You don't really want monk utility in keys, because we can talk about, oh, we should probably see some buffs for Windwalker. That would be great, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't provide any particularly amazing value. You can do some skips with Windwalker. I'm thinking of Mist of Tyrna Scythe. You can ring and incap the second pack, depending on how you approach the pool, and that would be great. There are other classes that can do this, and you're definitely gonna have one of them if you keep going into higher and higher keys. Not much to say about it. Overall, in terms of its design, it's similar to Hunter. Tier talents are not doing it any favors. It's just all passive. It's just all funneling more damage. It doesn't bring any uniqueness that can, you know, make it a desired spec in Mythic Plus. Ret is the most popular spec in World of Warcraft. It's very good. Some people might consider it S tier spec. I do not. It's not doing 19s. It's doing a few 18s, which that's pretty great, but it's not at the same level as the other specs. It is a Paladin spec. It's really good. You will definitely be able to get a lot of value out of having a Ret in your group, but you're already getting most, if not even better value from your Prot Paladin, most likely, which will be the tank of choice in doing high keys. So the Ret value diminishes considerably going into higher and higher keys. It does have really good damage. I don't think it can compete with Balanced Druid and Unholy DK, for instance, not even Frost Mage, but it does have access to it always. It's a very flexible spec that you can have. Like, if shit happens, Ret doesn't care, right? But if shit happens, Frost DK does no damage. If shit happens, Unholy might not do any damage, but Ret is just safe. It's a safe pick, solid tanky spec with immunes. The spells for poisons are obviously very good for obvious reasons. Not much I can say about that. It has dropped a little bit behind survival, which probably says a lot about survival, I suppose. Shadow is also down in the dumpsters. Now, Shadow, I know for a fact that does decent amount of damage. So it's not just the damage that it's not taken into the high keys. And I don't think it can compete with some of the higher specs, but I feel it's just purely outshined by Discipline Priest. if you really want a priest and you kind of don't really want priest. Sure, Mass Dispel is pretty good. Sure, Mind Soothe also allows skips and really good skips at that. And Power Fusion is always really good to funnel into a really good DPS. That's all in Discipline, but even without those, the reason you would want Discipline is probably for its healing, so you don't bring it for the priest effect. So if you don't need it from a Discipline, I don't see how you would need it from a Shadow Priest. Not to say that the benefits aren't good to have, but similar to a lot of the C tier specs, it just doesn't really bring a lot of cool shit that can push a party into pushing higher keys. And if it had like killer damage, maybe it could go all the way up to like B tier spec or something like that, if it got like some giga fat buffs. Until then, I don't know. Now, Assassination has been a debate on whether or not to go into S tier or A tier, because it starts to fall off quicker than the other S tier specs in terms of how high the key that can be pushed. I am not very sure if there's a 19 done at this rate. I actually have some info here. Let's see. So the highest Assassination is doing 18s solidly, and I think there might be some 19 attempts at this point. But as of recording this video, it's almost into A tier, but I figured it's so popular, it's doing so well, and it definitely has the potential to clear 19s that is just a little bit above Survival and Ret Paladin as of this point, which is why it's in S tier, but it's kind of like bottom S tier. You can think about it that way. Other than that, it's a rogue spec. Rogues are not particularly hot this season, but Assassination has been hot since day one because it's just a really good damage profile. It's kind of like what Fire Mage used to be, where you can just pick one target and just like smash it, and it just cleaves all around with caustic spatter, of course. So you can turn that single target that, you know, is really valuable in packs with one mob having 100 million HP and the other ones having like 60. It's really good to convert that into efficient damage profile instead of just, you know, having everybody clear the AoE and you just fight one mob for like 1 more minute. That's just not efficient. So Assassination solves that problem, and it's probably one of the reasons why it is in S tier currently. A lot of websites seem to rank Outlaw very highly, but I'm trying to see reasons to put it higher than B tier, and I just cannot really find any reasons. Obviously, it's in the shadow of Assassination. Maybe if Assassination was dog shit, we could probably see Outlaw all the way into A tier. But until then, Outlaw is where it is right now in terms of its rogue toolkit. In terms of its damage, it has really good damage, probably rivaling Red and Survival, maybe even higher, but it just doesn't really bring anything unique. I guess Shiv is great to soothe if Outlaws play Shiv, but I cannot really think of a reason why I personally would want an Outlaw over any other A or S tier spec in my team, and that's probably the general mentality that a lot of parties might have getting into these higher keys, and I don't think its damage can compete with Assassination at this point anyway. Similar can be said about Subtlety. Same thing. Maybe these two specs are on the rise, because I believe Warcraft logs and Archon.gg kind of see these two specs ranked a little bit higher, but they're just not clearing the key levels that I would like for them to be a little bit higher in the tier list. So down there it goes. It used to be the worst spec in the game. I think last time we made a DPS tier list, and it's now C tier. It's kind of bottom C tier, which is still not that great, but listen, it's doing 16s, and it might still need some damage boosts, even though it's, you know, an OG top meta spec, but it hasn't been that way for a long time, and ever since its rework, it's not looking like it's gonna be anytime soon, unless it just gets an overhaul somehow. Elemental has climbed since I believe last time we had it in A tier. It is now a bona fide, how you say it, S tier spec. It is clearing really high keys, 18s and 19s at the moment. It's crushing it. That's great for Elemental. Shaman is eating good this season. Obviously, it has really good utility for the current season with the Poison Cleansing Totem, which is really good. The Curse Dispels, the Bloodlust, the damage profile. I think probably the best-selling point for Elemental is its damage. Holy shit, man. Damn. It's cranking. It's really good. And it has the Shaman utility that you'll probably always want. Similarly, enhancement. It is a smidge better than Elemental, a little bit better though, but they are still kind of in the same boat in doing the highest of keys. No, I think the rank 1 Shaman right now in terms of keys pushed is an enhancement, but it's likely that Elemental is like second or third, so it's doing pretty well for itself, no doubt about that. But enhancement is obviously taking the cake. It is still to this day the #1 DPS spec in the game, the #1 melee spec in the game, of course, because obviously. And it's just good. Dude, Shamans, Death Knights, mages are eating well this season, okay? So they are really good. Not something that I can say about Demonology and kind of Warlock in general, but Demonology is still the worst Warlock spec performing. It's in C tier. It has been promoted a little bit, I believe. It's getting closer to Affliction, but I don't think it can stand a chance against the B tier specs. It's doing, what is it, 16s, 15, 16s? That's fine. Once again, Demonology and Warlock in general don't really have a good utility kit for Mythic Plus, so the only time when they're really good, A tier or higher, is when they have just really good damage, and Demo has okay damage, and that's where C tier is. It's okay. Destro has really good damage though, and it's B tier. It's not quite yet into S tier, A tier, sorry, but it is doing better than most B tier specs. And obviously, since the popularity of MDI, more people play it, more people figure out that hey, it can actually do damage, because as with all rankings, and this tier list is included as well, these representations of specs are based off of players actually playing them. If, let's say, there are 100 best players in the world and 80 of them just play Enhancement and Frost DK, then you're not going to see that many of them play worse specs, and those specs will just overall and on average perform way lower. Let's say if the best balanced Druid would play Destro Warlock, maybe we could see Destro go higher, or mages play Destro Warlock or something like that. But until then, it's B tier, still pretty good. Obviously, you can look at keys above 16-ish for B tier specs, and it's way better than the other Warlock specs for sure. Arms. Now, there's something to be said about arms. Similar to Feral, it's, I'm gonna put it, it seems like I have it here, and I know why. Overall, the top 10 arms in the world are doing a little bit better than the top 10 Arcane in the world, and the top 10 everything in C tier in the world. And the top arms in the world is close to Destro levels. It's doing 17s, maybe even 18s at this point. Once again, that's just one player. It cannot hold the candle to Fury yet, and we'll get to that in a second. But Arms is definitely seeing a resurgence. However, this is just at the high end. There's a very big drop-off for Arms later on, and it's not that popular. It has decent damage profile, but I feel that is just way better implemented by Fury Warrior, which is close to being S tier, by the way. Color me surprised. Fury has had quite a ride in the War Within, with ups and downs in terms of buffs and nerfs, and the more people play it, the higher they push, and now Fury's doing 18. Some of the top Furies anyway. Not all of them, sure, and it's also still very few of them, but Fury's not doing too bad for itself. Once again, it's probably as high as it's going to climb, unless it just gets giga damage buffs, because at the end of the day, Warriors, similar to Warlock, just don't really bring a lot of stuff to Mythic Plus that would make a party want them. Like, nobody's gonna care about Rallying Cry, let's be honest here. You can spell reflect some things and make some cute little mechanics happen, but nothing that will save a key. It's just cute. That's about it. That's where Warrior is at the moment. But hey, happy for Fury that it's actually doing higher and higher keys, despite all of the nerfs that it has received. And last but not least, definitely not least, Augmentation retains its supreme spot as the numero uno. I hesitate to call it DPS. Obviously, this is a DPS tier list, and it is said that as DPS, but we all know that Augmentation is a support spec. It is consistently the most played spec in the highest of keys, 19s at this point, and you cannot really do any key above 17 maybe without an augmentation in your team. You will probably have to sweat quite a lot, and it just makes these keys possible, and that's why it's actually at the top of the top, and it's likely going to be that way until we get another support spec. And you look at this tier list, and there's quite a few in S tier, and that's particularly great, but there's also a story that you need to understand, which you can see on the screen right now, and this is essentially how specs evolve over the course of pushing keys higher and higher and higher. This is of course based off of the number of people that are playing them, not necessarily indicative of how strong they are, although you can see Ret being consistently strong across the board. That is the reliability of Retribution Paladin and how good it is. And once you get to a certain point, you'll see that specs drop off. You'll start to see Frost DK getting better and better, and once you get to like 12, 13s, 14s, you'll see a rise in augmentation as to how good it is and why it is currently all the way into S tier. But once again, this tier list and this ranking in general is looking at the top players in the world, kind of like the top 10 players in the world. I'm pretty sure that you can play a D tier spec in your +8 key and do amazingly well and maybe even top the damage meters. That's not the point. We look at the best players because they can take the spec to the most amount of performance that they can, and it's basically the best way to look at how they differ between each other and why this is spread to D tier. D tier doesn't mean it's terrible. It's doing 14s, right? So that's still great. But hopefully you enjoyed this one. And by the way, there's something else that you need to see, and it's this video right here, and it is about playing World of Warcraft solo, because you need a party to play keys this high, but maybe you don't care. Maybe you just want to not have to worry about fighting a guild, populating your Battle.net friends list with people. Maybe you just like to take it chill and just enjoy the game for what it's worth. Is it possible? Is it better than in the past? Well, we talk about it right here.